Today I wanted to do a deep dive about what is going on with the Emporia Country Club and DD as a whole, because there's a lot that I think a lot of people do not know about, and I wanted to bring out all the information and figure out what is the deal with Dynamic and where they kind of stand with DDO. There's so much information that I want to talk about today regarding Dynamic Disc. So I've been playing disc golf tournaments in Emporia since 2020, which may not seem like a long time, but that is basically the entire duration of my career. So basically a large percentage of my AM side and my pro side experience has been at Emporia. So with that said, I feel like I do have a decent amount of experience and authority on the topic. And as a spectator and viewer of DDO, Glass Blown Open, and all the amateur side events, I do think they run great events. I'm pleasantly greeted by just so many good vibes from everybody, and it really does seem like Emporia is just like the home of good quality disc golf. You have pretty much everywhere you go, even this like random bar and grill I went to during my intermission between my event. I was just looking at the bar and I was like, are those discs? And yes, even a bar in Emporia has custom stamped disc, so it really is just the culture. But while it may seem like the culture, there's also a lot of kind of negative things surrounding the area. First one being that it seems like the city of Emporia does not always agree with the disc golf world in Emporia. So one data point from that I just witnessed is there was this event during Easter. We were all playing this course that feels like it should be a private course, but for whatever reason, there was a disc that was probably thrown a little bit too close to a child. I don't fully know the circumstances because all I heard was screaming, but basically some non-disc golfers got very riled up at the disc golfers because they kind of thought that disc golfers are being reckless and throwing discs at children. And then there was some extremely vulgar language that I will not repeat, but it certainly seems like this should be a private event where you don't have a bunch of people right next to a hole where people are throwing very, very fast and can potentially grip lock into another person. That is certainly a possibility. And so it was just chaos for a moment. And there is also the notion that people want parks that are not just disc golf courses in the area. So there's just a lot of I think tension between disc golfers and non-disc golfers in Emporia, but that is not really the main thing I want to talk about today. The thing I want to talk about is this new course and kind of what has led up to where Dynamic is at, both the good and the bad. So to be frank, I think the overall market share of Dynamic has dipped. I see so many players not even throwing any Dynamic. I see a lot of people really just thinking like, oh yeah, I mean, I used to throw them, but I don't really throw them anymore. That seems to be a continual trend. And even with their Supreme Plastic, that I do think is phenomenal, I don't think they have the same amount of grip that they used to have on the industry. And so while they did just join House of Disc last year, I think the overall appeal of them has certainly dipped, and I don't fully know how they will kind of get that market share back, because it certainly doesn't seem like it's something that you can just do in a day. But not only the plastic, there's also been some very not so good things with their entire company status, because I don't think a lot of people actually know the specifics about why there's this kind of hate towards Dynamic. And basically 2 years ago, their director of HR at Dynamic, Corey Wiltz was the principal of a middle school, and there was a situation where a bus driver reported this 8th grader over vulgar language, which ended up being basically just saying, I'm a lesbian. There was a lot more that was put into the report, saying a lot more vulgar stuff, but as the video evidence showed, that was clearly not the case. And even though basically the only thing that was said was, I'm a lesbian, that was enough to suspend the student for 3 days. And the biggest thing I want to take away from this is that there was the opportunity for Corey Wiltz to kind of make it right, to discipline the bus driver for lying about the report, even though there was video evidence that what he claimed was very much not the case. And along with that, there was also video evidence of, and I quote, effing N-bomb, what the F, stop putting the effing camera in my face, and some very actual vulgar stuff, but none of that was actually disciplined in any regard. And so basically the only person that was penalized was the person saying I'm a lesbian, which is just certainly not a good look, especially when you have the video evidence to support the claim that the student was basically not doing anything wrong and was actually being bullied. The person getting bullied was disciplined, which is just not great. So Corey Wiltz had the opportunity to make it right and did not. And when the school year ended, he left that position to become an assistant principal at a high school in Emporia. So it was actually, all these events were not in Emporia. But the high school rescinded that offer. So where does he go now? The director of HR for Dynamic. So obviously you can definitely tell there's some weirdness going on with that. And according to this post, which may not be true, he was a family friend of Jeremy Rusko. So all these events led up to him becoming the HR director for Dynamic, which really has just some very bad looks, especially for people that are kind of already thinking of Dynamic as kind of a not so good company. So with that said, we go to the Emporia Country Club and the events of DDO last year. There was a situation where the AM side was put on a totally separate weekend as a pro side, and not only did the players kind of hate the course because of wind, golf course just not looking great, there was a lot of artificial OB, all of this kind of manifested to being just one of the worst events of the entire year. So I'll definitely not claim that is solely because of the disc golf. I think there's just a lot of outside things going on there, but it clearly caught a lot of people the wrong way. Because you have a lot of fans that want to see the DDO. It is very close to a lot of big cities like Kansas City, and if people are coming for one weekend for the AM side, they're probably not going to be coming again for the pro side. So it just looked like basically nobody was there, nobody wanted to see it, and it was kind of the most forgettable tournament last year. So with that said, we now have a new ownership of the entire country club, which is only half the tournament, but still definitely a major part of the DDO. And you may be asking, well, who bought it? Well, that would be the founder of Dynamic, Jeremy Rusko. And as he stated on the Tour Life podcast, he has a lot of plans, which includes new layouts for the course, both ball golf and disc golf, hosting music festivals, indoor pickleball, a new 9-hole, and just an overall redesign of the property. And he actually attempted to buy it last year, but was not able to, which was probably a good thing because he had a lot of challenges with the merger of Dynamic and House of Disc. So now the property will now be renamed to Champions Landing. I was able to play it day one, which was super cool. And going into some of the specifics, he's actually vying for a Kansas grant for tourism, which will give them a good chunk of money to do a lot more with the property. And basically he said, if this was not bought by him, then it would probably be bought by outside investors, which most likely will just make it into a housing property, which would almost certainly close down the Emporia Country Club. So I can definitely see that this was not an easy decision, it was not a cheap decision, I assume, and the intention here is to make it much more disc golf friendly. They're making it very accessible for only $10 a day, which is still kind of a lot for the Emporia scene, but for a phenomenal golf course like this, I think it's definitely worth it. And if you want to have a golf cart, that is an additional $20. And I was actually lucky enough to have somebody gift me their golf cart because they had some no-shows, so I actually got to speed through the course in probably like an hour. It was a lot of fun. So the overall cost for me, for my round, was about $11 with tax. And at least the claim here is that the emphasis will become much more about disc golf and less about ball golf, and overall being inclusive. It is no longer a true country club. You don't have to have membership fees.
Beth at 69.
I just told myself, you got to will this one in there. Whatever you have, just will it in there.
This man is unbelievable. This is what athletes live for. This is the moment.
They already have some pickleball courts outside and they plan to have some inside, so they are clearly trying to vie for a lot more than just a ball golf course. And it certainly seems like the intent is still to have Worlds come back to Emporia. As far as I know, there is no Pro Worlds being scheduled for Emporia anytime soon, but I definitely would be intrigued to see if they do get a bid for the next coming years. And to me, I definitely feel like while Emporia is very inclusive of disc golf and it feels like a great place for that, I still do feel like it's kind of like that good old boys vibe where there's just like some overall prejudice towards people, and is definitely evidenced by the fact that their HR department has some very bad press with students. And when the HR department has very bad press with children, that's just not a great look. And along with that, there was this post about 6 years ago where Jeremy Rusko claimed that Dynamic and Emporia needs oil and gas to kind of function in a good way.
Everything that is in the store has something or another to do with oil. Life without oil and gas would definitely be life without disc golf.
I mean, in some ways that's true, but it's also like a very weird stance to take, especially when you are probably getting paid to make that stance. It's just weird. It's just weird. And like, I know that plastics are made from oil, so like I get that that's true, but it kind of just added to the feel that Kansas is outdated, kind of weird, and it kind of like fed into a lot of people's stereotypes of Kansas, which is not great. But with all this said, there is this 113-year-old course that is being revamped and being reworked, and along with that, I think we're getting a slightly different Jones course, so that will also be exciting to watch. But with all this said, the future of Dynamic certainly feels like it is trying to rewrite the history, and that is probably a good thing, but we definitely cannot forget the history of Dynamic and how we got here. There are a lot of great pros sponsored by Dynamic, there's a lot of great people that throw Dynamic, but it certainly feels like this history was lost because there's just always something new going on, and I thought it'd be important to recap how did we get here with the Dynamic. So with that said, what do you guys think about all of this? I'm certain there's probably a lot of opinions regarding this topic, so if you guys have any strong thoughts, be sure to comment down below. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Wild Runs, signing out, peace.